Welcome back to another episode of Hangar Flying with Smokehouse Pilots. I'm your host, Gabe Muller, with this evening, James Spearman. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from James his story around his mechanic shop, but more importantly, and maybe not more importantly, but also super interested in your journey within aviation. And so I think really looking forward. James, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm a big fan of your show. I'm really gracious to be here for sure, Gabe.
Oh, thank you so much, and I really appreciate that. And I think that one of the things that, just to throw it out there, is that this world of aviation, you find the community, and the community is so great, and you can meet great people and have these types of conversations. I feel like aviation is just the best place for that. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, certainly. The best way to see it is, I would say, being around the airfield with people that just like to hang out and enjoy airplanes and kick out the lawn chairs and watch airplanes take off. And then if you ever go to something like Oshkosh, you just see the passion. It's like a bug or a sparkle in your eye that I myself caught when I was in middle school, and it just won't go away.
Dude, I totally can resonate with that. So, if you don't mind, I'd love to kind of start from maybe back in the beginning. So what got you into flying? And if it was middle school, what was going on?
Yeah, so my grandfather was a World War II aviator. He flew B-25s in the Pacific, and he did a lot of missions out there. And he continued on to fly the B-36 and eventually the B-52. And so he had a full long career in the Air Force and as a pilot. So my dad, for whatever reason, he like rebelled and wouldn't go into the military. But the opposite was true with me. He wanted me to be around airplanes and join the Air Force, which was kind of funny. But I grew up looking at pictures of my grandfather with bullet holes down the side of his airplane, a B-25 in World War II, or with the B-52 or B-36.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad started taking me to air shows when I was little. And I saw some planes with their cowls off, and I was like, I think I'm gonna do this. And then I started taking pilot lessons when I was about 14 or 15. I was a busboy in Pigeon Forge, and I would take my entire check. It was like $115 or something.
Mm-hmm.
My entire check, and I would just give it to my flight instructor and get
Just hand it over.
hour. Just get 1 hour of flight time.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is really cool. So you started really, really young, and it was a result of your grandfather, it sounds like.
Yeah, that's correct.
Wow, that is really cool. What when you first started flying, I mean, was it just like a no-brainer for you? You were like, I'm absolutely doing this. Was there any hesitation when you did start flying of like, do I really enjoy this? Like, what was your initial thoughts? Was it love at first sight sort of thing?
Well, I knew I wanted to be an Air Force pilot. And definitely when I first started flying, I started getting kind of airsick initially, and that was kind of discouraging to me very early on. I was like, man, how am I supposed to make this happen? I'm definitely going to do this.
Right.
But eventually it just kind of went away, and haven't ever looked back. Another thing I messed with was RC planes.
Oh, nice.
I remember I was like 15 years old. My neighbor gave me a way overpowered RC plane. It had like a weed eater engine on it. And if you know anything about like RC airplanes, like they're really hard to fly, and you really need to work your way up. So I bring this thing out, and I just crash the what out of it. And I'm like, oh my God, that's it. There's no way.
Wow. That RC flying is not easy, right? I mean, that's a skill you've got to learn. Yeah. That's amazing. So where was it that you actually took your first flying lessons?
It was actually at this airport it's Golf Kilo Tango in Sevierville, Tennessee, or Sevierville, Pigeon Forge, and Gatlinburg are pretty much the same town. But I started taking it here, and then eventually I joined the Air Force, enlisted, and as a mechanic first, and the Air Force gave me a sign-on bonus, and I was 18 years old, and I took that it was $20,000, and they gave me the first half to begin with, and I took the entire check to my flight instructor, and I was like, let's do it.
Wow. You're all in.
From basic training, yep. And then
Wow.
I took the second half, got my instrument, and then kept clawing at the door of the unit, and they eventually picked me up and sent me to Air Force pilot training, which
Wow.
was one of the highlights of my career, I feel like.
Wow. Well, if that's the case, I'd love to learn more about that. What was that experience like? And, for those listeners that, those that are aspiring to be pilots, is there any lessons and, highlights that you can share with us that might be valuable?
Certainly. Specifically in Air Force pilot training, it was one of the hardest years of my life. And it's crazy to think about, like, your best friends around you are going home. Like, every day your dream is on the line, and it's real. Your best friend, he failed too many rides. He's going home. Dream's over. And it's not like you can come back. You're done. And so for me, and my mindset was, and I had you have to get hired and pitched to the commanders at the base why to send you and spend their dollars on you to put you through Air Force pilot training. And my pitch to them was, I will pass no matter what. And if the only way they're going to get me out of that cockpit is like kicking and screaming with nail marks down the side of the plane,
Yeah.
I will do whatever it takes to succeed. And that was the kind of mindset that you really had to have. Everyone wanted to party on the weekends. Everybody, the guys that took it lightly, they went home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of neat because those same principles have helped me a lot in business as well. I think business is extremely difficult, and if you don't have that will or that drive, it's over.
Right.
You can fail.
Absolutely. I think that's amazing that you were able to have that confidence and that just drive and willing and just being able to know that success was not an option, right? It was going to happen. One of the things I share with a lot of the work I do with clients, this might resonate, is that anytime you go down implementing some type of process, I say it's either a hell yes or a hell no, because everything in the middle is hell. And so for you were basically obviously a hell yes, and I'm going to figure it out. And that's translated into your entrepreneurial world, it sounds like, as well. So do you have an entrepreneurial spirit?
Yeah, so my dad, so my grandfather was the military one. My dad was the entrepreneur, and so he was an artist, and I've never saw him work for somebody. He always worked for himself. At one point, he had all the character stands in the quick sketches at Disney World in Orlando, and it was just it was really cool. So seeing that also took to me that. I could not, I could be my own boss. Everyone says that until you realize what that actually means. I realized it was way harder than what I thought. But my dad instilled that in me, and so I would, I'd find and I'm a very mechanical person. I'm an AMPIA as well, and I own the maintenance shop. So even at a young age, I'd find like a lawnmower in the trash, and I'd just fix it and sell it on the corner for like $10.
Oh, that's awesome!
To me, that was awesome.
Yeah. So that's really cool. I mean, how I do want to go back to some of the flying stuff before we get into, if you don't mind, get into more about what you're up to now with your business.
Certainly.
But when you were in the training, I mean, is there one outside of just the fact that you knew that you were going to succeed and that there was no option? The flying itself, was there anything that stands out as far as a super challenging thing for you and or a highlight that you can share with us through the training itself?
Yeah, so I think the training, it's so much different than if civilians are getting their pilot's license. A civilian kind of just shows up and expects the flight instructor to teach them, hey, I'm here, I showed up, not really prepared. And in the Air Force, you're actually prepping the flight, the entire flight. And then your pre-brief is you're telling the instructor what you're going to do and then what he's going to grade you on. And so it puts so much ownership on us on the actual flight planning and owning. I mean, the instructor just pretty much stayed quiet the entire time unless you failed the ride. So, or snapped on you,
Right.
And so I think the having that level of ownership from the very beginning of like, nobody's here to save me, right? Like, this is on me. I need to do this. And that was true from like the very first rides that we had. So I think ownership was really neat, a good part of it. I also think the form of flying. If we're going to fly 200 feet, we're going to fly 200 feet or 500 feet or 3,500, whatever. We're going to fly 3,500 feet. We're not going to fly, 3,550 or 3,580.
Right.
So having some pride in your basic aircraft control was really cool. And, trying to master the craft of putting the airplane where you want it. And then just getting a feel for the airplane. The really neat thing, the most challenging part, I would say, of Air Force pilot training, and most people would probably say it, is actually the traffic pattern at any Air Force base. It's the most complicated thing ever.
Really?
And you're flying a 1,000 shaft horsepower, PT6 driven T6 Texan 2. And we're the only thing we'd done prior to that was I had a lot of GA flying prior to that, but I've never flown anything with 1,000 shaft horsepower. So you put the power to it and you lift off and bring the gear up, and you're at 200 knots like that. And
Yeah.
and so 200 knots indicated, and that this pattern would it was so challenging. It would have us lift off, have a slight jink over, and then we would level off at like 500 feet. All the guys at pilot training right now would say I'm butchering it, but all the turns in the traffic pattern. So the airspeed is 200 knots, and all turns are 60 degrees of bank.
Oh,
so
wow.
First off, you got to jink over, level off, and then that first turn, you go straight 60 degrees of bank, pull 2 Gs, and you're at 200 knots to make it across, and that's your crosswind. And then your level, I want to say it's 500 feet or 1,000, and then there's this right on crosswind. You have to climb up another 500 feet and level back off. And it was so funny the first time I ever did that. And prior to this flight, I had gone out and done some IFR flying in the plane. I landed it right off the bat. I was just like, this is easy.
Yeah.
And then they let you loose in this psychotic pattern, and it just humbles you so fast. So, we need to climb. 500 feet, and what I do is I check max and just pull about 25 degrees nose high, and the altimeter just goes. And then I realized I'm like, and then I just slam the stick forward to capture, that 500-foot climb, and there's just stuff floating in front of me, right? And then I'm like, oh man! So then I yank the stick back, and then what it creates is just a, well, bam! It just slams myself and the instructor in the seat, and he was done with the flight. He was so upset. He was screaming at me in the back. He was like, "What are you doing?"
Oh man! I mean, it happens fast, right? I mean, that's some high horsepower and high speeds right there. I mean,
yeah, I think if you had a lot of there's certainly certified flight instructors that go through Air Force pilot training. I would recommend don't say anything. Don't say that you are. Just keep that to yourself. But that traffic pattern humbles everyone in the T6.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really interesting. Your point about showing up, and you were basically accountable for the preparation, the execution, and probably the debrief, and that instructor was there to just catch you if you needed it. It sounds like, more or less. Is that kind of how it is? I mean, you were solely accountable for the outcome of that versus relying on somebody else to kind of, like you said, in the GA world. I do remember going to the airport going, okay, well, if anything happens, he's going to save me, versus just taking full accountability for that. Very big difference.
They would essentially stay quiet until the end, and then they're like, okay, now it's grade time, and they would go down and mark your standards on the list all the way down, and it resulted in either a pass for that ride or a hook. Hook is a fail.
Gotcha. Okay. How was what was that like, as far as, did you have a certain amount of fails that you had leeway for, or was it more just like one and done, you're out, or how does that work?
You got 3.
3.
And then you would go, there's different blocks of training, but you would have three rides that you could fail. And then you would go to essentially a big picture ride with a flight commander.
Okay.
And he's kind of making the decision big picture, did he just, have some bad circumstances? Do we think does he have a good attitude? It's more big picture. And then if you hook that one, you go to an 89, and then essentially this is even bigger picture. Should we give this? Do we send him home?
Gotcha.
And so and I saw a lot of people go to 89s.
Yeah.
And you can't make it out of it, right, though? So you can't, sometimes bad luck happens and you make it to that 89 and then you get through it. So.
Wow. Well, so obviously you have amazing experience in the Air Force and going through the training and all the disciplines you learned. When was it that you decided that, and by the way, you still fly the KC-135, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes.
right? So what does that entail at the moment? What kind of missions are you doing there?
So I'm in the Air Force National Guard in Knoxville, flying the KC-135. There's deployments. I actually just got back from a deployment to Qatar, where I got the Air Medal. I did over 20 combat sorties, and was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross,
Wow.
which is just surreal to me. And the tanker is another really, really challenging airplane to fly. Anyone that has the experience in the plane would know it. You've got 4 engines that are non-FADEC controlled, so we're coming down final, and the throttle quadrant looks like a crazy hornet's nest, and you're trying to manage all these and hand fly the plane, and it's cables and linkages.
Wow.
Minus the rudder, and that plane is the fastest in the heavy in the inventory. We routinely will cross at 0.84 Mach, 0.83 Mach, and we fly them in formation, which is insane. The first time we came back, we're like, well, we got a formation flight today, and it's just like, what? This thing's the size of an airliner. Are you insane? They're like, yep, we're going to do formation. And so we'll fly formation within each other, and we'll have, F-16s or F-15s in formation with lead or number 2, and we'll refuel them in formation with each other.
Wow.
Which is really surreal. It's
Is that
awesome.
nerve-wracking or what? I mean, is it?
It's certainly in the beginning. It definitely was.
Yeah. I mean,
especially...
Yeah, go ahead.
Just seeing the the F-15s, F-16s pulling up beside you, and realizing the firepower that's with you is really cool.
Yeah, that is surreal, as you said, and congratulations on the awards. I mean, that's incredibly impressive. That's wow. I mean, I'm speechless on that. What? From there, you go into you're still doing what you're doing. You just get back from a deployment, and obviously you're running your business. When was it that you decided to launch this business, and how did that go?
Yeah, so while I was waiting to go to Air Force pilot training, I was working for Cirrus Aircraft in Knoxville, and as an AMP, and the wheels were definitely turning at this point. I was reading every entrepreneurial book I could get my hands on. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was kind of the big one that I kept going back to. Mm-hmm. And, I always felt like, man, if I get the shot, I should definitely take it, no matter what. And luckily, one Cirrus owner, he became a mentor of mine. And he paid me just to sit in the seat and go fly with him one day. And I sat there and I just looked at him. I was like, and in my head, I was like, James, this is a really big missed opportunity not to ask him a story. So I was like, dude, what's your story? How'd you get to this point where you own a $1.2 million airplane? At that time, he had a brand new SR-22. And he said, James, I was a normal guy. I was an engineer. I didn't like doing that. I worked in a cubicle. I made like $45K a year, and I was just sick and tired of it. And I just had a board, and I said all the other things that I could do, and one of them said business owner, so I went and did it. And I was like, man, if this guy can do it, I can do it. I can, at least when I turn 50, if I fail, I know that I gave it my best. I gave it my all. And so I knew that I was going to come back with the Air Force National Guard kind of as a part-time gig. It is fairly demanding what they ask of us with deployments and trips all around the world and local sorties, but I'll have the time to do something full-time but still have the security of the Air National Guard as kind of a fallback. And so I started just I went Biz Buy Sell is it's just a website of like the MLS of businesses, right? So we just started looking at anything. We almost bought me and the wife almost bought a Froyo to
Oh, really?
start,
Nice.
and then one of the shops that I had worked at very early on as an AMP. I just kind of kept in touch with him, and it was this shop. And I asked him, hey, if you ever want to sell, just let me know. And I kept calling him, and then one day he said, okay, let's do it.
Wow. That is super cool. So how long ago was that?
That was in 2020.
Okay. Wow. So coming right into the COVID area, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Did that obviously present some challenges for you through that, or?
I would say general aviation kind of took a spike during
Yeah.
COVID because if you had the capability of flying private, you did.
Right. That's true. So I remember when that all happened, we were still flying a lot. I mean, at the end of the day, and everyone was going to the big airports, right? Going to Dulles or whatever, into these big class Bravos or whatever, or Charlies, whatever it was. But I feel like GA actually did take off quite a bit. So I wasn't sure if it did affect you that way. So fast forward, so you're running the business, you're balancing that with all of the other things you do. What does the team look like? How does that play itself out these days for you?
Yeah, so really neat. I'm super proud of my team. We've got over 100 years of experience combined on the shop floor.
Wow.
We've had upwards of 4 IAs, 3 IAs at the minimum. Myself and my DOM, he has over 32 years, or probably at this point 35 years of experience. And most of us came from Cirrus as well, so that's kind of where we specialize. And we're able to stay open 7 days a week, and we turn a lot of airplanes out and stand on our quality.
Wow. You stay open 7 days a week.
That's right.
That's kind of unheard of, if I recall.
Yeah, not a lot of shops do it. And the neat thing with that has been able to, once you cut out, Saturday and Sunday, you're able to really start cutting down timelines. And so we were like, hey, why don't we put a guarantee of 14 days on the timeline? And then for any day that we go over, we'll credit your account.
Really? Wow.
$50 per day that we go over.
Wow.
So
That's quite the standby on that. That's awesome. I love it. So when you, if you kind of think about what you shared, kind of going through training, right, and what you learned, like, hey, I'm not failing at this. Seems like you've correlated that right into your business world as well, and in a maybe an intentional way, but from how I hear it, it's clearly your life is very interconnected in those two areas. It seems like.
Yeah, certainly. I think anyone that thinks they want to be a business owner, within the first year or two, you're going to realize how very difficult it is. And if you don't have that mentality of I'm not going to quit, you're going to quit, and it's not, probably fairly quickly. I'm sure. I'm sure you've seen it with friends and business associates around you. They're just not willing to, not quit.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I do for a living is actually help businesses with their long-term strategic plans and leadership development and making sure they have the right people in the right seat. And so it is what I teach is this concept of hitting the ceiling, and you will hit ceilings constantly. And 50% of businesses within the first 5 years will fail because they don't know how to break through those ceilings. And so it's really important to have the mindset, first of all, to go through that. One other thing on that is that it's kind of, you have to be in this right state of mind before you can figure out the how. And so, yes, the how is going to happen, the strategy is going to happen, but you have to be in the right state of mind. And it seems like all of the training and the experience that you've gone through the Air Force and such has to benefit you within how you operate and be in the right state of mind for your business. Do you feel like, go ahead.
I would say handling emergencies in the aircraft. are the Air Force taught us, to fly the aircraft first and use in the KC-135. We're a crewed aircraft, so we've got a team around us of where we can make level-headed decisions, not rush into making drastic decisions, using all the resources at our hands. And I think the more another thing that the Air Force taught me is that stress. Basic training is what they call it is stress inoculation. The tolerance for stress from the human body. I don't know if this is true, but goes up as you have more stressful events. And so, I've definitely seen that where early on, $500 would really move my needle. I would freak out over it.
Right.
And then all of a sudden the zeros go, keep going on it, and you're like, what, it's just not as big of a deal, And the other neat thing is, in my business, all of my customers are business owners too, right? So I'm able to just kind of rub shoulders, and
Sure.
I fly with a lot of my customers, so. You've got them captive in an airplane, and until recently, you didn't have Starlink in the plane, so they can't use their phone. So I mean, you got them. You might as well ask them questions. And what it helped me learn is handling things with grace, slowing down, and just trying to make level-headed decisions. The customers that I have that have the highest net worth and have been doing it the longest. They just handle it. It's so unique how they can handle a situation where I've seen people freak out and they want to blow up over stuff or whatever, and they can just handle it with such grace. It's just so cool.
That is a master skill, I think, and I think that as you mentioned, flying. There's inherent risk in that, and you have to train for these emergencies. It's no different than running the business and having to be able to train yourself to handle those quote unquote emergencies when we find those things. And so I love the correlations between business and aviation because there's so many. A lot of times it's a bit cliche, but to be honest with you, I think it is so powerful when you start to look at those two things. That's actually one of the reasons I got into flying was because I was in financial planning and I was not a pilot, and I thought how cool it would be to write about financial planning and flight planning and like the correlations between that, because there's a lot. And so that's actually how I got into flying, believe it or not. So little side story there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it's kind of cool to kind of bring all of that together. What was it like working for Cirrus?
Cirrus Knoxville, have you been there?
I haven't yet, and I can't believe that I haven't. I definitely want to get there.
So it's kind of awe-inspiring. So it's their facilities are definitely the best that I've ever seen or compete with Gulfstream or anything like that. It's just gorgeous. And what I did learn probably the most from Cirrus is customer service. We always made a joke with the customers as the mechanics, because a customer would get upset about something and be like, well, all you have to do is stamp your feet long enough and they'll give it to you, But I always tried to you're around so many high net worth individuals that are just, and I don't mean to say it like just about the money, but some of these people can change the course of your life, really. I would say my mentor that I flew in the cockpit that day, I mean, he's that much of an impact. And so I think using the white glove approach, and I was a busboy and a waiter kind of through high school, so that customer service is what I've tried to take as much as I can into aircraft maintenance. For the most part, people don't want to do maintenance. I mean, they have to do maintenance, but nobody really wants to. If they could wave a wand, right, they'd make it go away. So there's no real reason to be a jerk about things, and I try to do the same thing with especially new aircraft owners that they've just seen like, man, this thing is way more expensive than my boat, and I'm like, I totally understand. You're right. trying to handle those situations with some with grace, and trying to educate them, and this isn't a boat, and this can kill you. It really can. And it kind of a side tangent with the same philosophy in business and pilots mixing. Most entrepreneurs have this. I don't take no for an answer. And kind of macho man. I'm going to figure this out no matter what. And those are like the human factors that the FAA, identifies, right? So, trying to educate, owners into slow down. You don't need to be in a hurry. You're already saving a ton of time with this airplane.
Yeah. Right.
Do your due diligence before you get to the airplane. Put thought behind it. So,
absolutely. I bought the Cirrus in 3.5 years ago, maybe. And I have to tell you, that was nerve-wracking to go into maintenance and to do the things we have to do, obviously on an annual basis. But when things come up, so my point is that having a good team of mechanics is super important, and it's part of the team to make a successful all-around aircraft and safety and all of those things. And with that comes a ton of education for those owners like myself at the time that was new. And there's a lot of emotion in that, right? And you got to probably deal with that sometimes. And so having that experience and being able to calmly walk someone through that while also teaching them is something that clearly you're able to do. And you clearly can do that well. So I commend you on that from a standpoint of, there's a lot of people that could take your lead. How about that?
Yeah, and it just doesn't help anyone, right? If they flip out and the mechanic flips out, and then come get your airplane. It's in the back of the hangar. Blah blah blah. There's just so many like nightmare stories that I've heard of owners versus the mechanics, and I just don't have time for that. So I'd rather just educate. And I really try to be a well-rounded resource. I'm a pilot. I'm a mechanic. I'm a business owner. I try to, and this is all I do is airplanes. This is literally somehow I figured out how to only do airplanes for a living. And so I try to use that experience to help owners. I'm sure some YouTube video that I watched, or being at Oshkosh or Sun and Fun or the NBAA, I've heard of a lot of stuff. So, or I can at least have relationships where I can figure something out for an owner. So trying to be that well-rounded resource for them.
Dude, that's so good. I love that. I really do love that. And it's spot on. I mean, that's exactly what it is. And taking all of the experiences that you've had up to this point to then continue to add value to people through whatever way you can is your approach. I really appreciate that. I think that's awesome.
I will say the funny side of it, though, right, is when I do the best job that I do, so you're paying me good money to inspect your aircraft, let's say the annual, for example.
Sure.
The best job that I do, the more I find, right, which is conceived as this dude's nickel and diamond me, right? It's like, well, no, I'm trying to do... I want you to know exactly where this plane is, and that there's no doubt. And you're putting I normally put my pink butt in the seat first before the plane even goes back to the owner, right? Like, I want this plane to be as safe as possible for you. So the perception early on for owners and before they finally grasp that is like, oh, okay, yeah.
Right. Well, I think it also goes to... you will find the ideal clients or customers that appreciate that, right? And you're going to probably find some that don't. And both, by the way, is great, because maybe they just need to go somewhere else or have a different solution, and that's cool too. I just came out of annual literally last Friday. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the airplane for a month because of my schedule, so it was there for a while down in Georgia, but I do. Taking that first flight is always a little bit not nerve-wracking, but you definitely have your eyes and ears wide open, right, for just in case anything happens. And so, it's awesome that you take that pride in that. Do you actually fly the aircraft?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
so I'll fly them if they give me the permission to. I'll fly it before they ever get to the plane, and I try to coach them too. I get good tips for that. Anytime the airplane came out of like really any sort of like, especially major maintenance, You really one thing that you can mitigate that with is full power run at the kind of the dog leg or the lineup. You do your normal run up and then take the aircraft up to full power, hold the brakes, and leave it there for handful of potatoes, 5, 6, 7 potatoes, and make sure the aircraft is going to maintain that full power. I would, on that first flight out, not necessarily take it straight on a vacation, right?
Sure.
Don't take the airplane straight to Florida to Disney World.
Right.
Get some hours on it before you put the family in it. I would say it's a little bit overkill, but you could totally loiter overhead for a few turns.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all things that I do, not necessarily if my team touched it, but if we're troubleshooting something heavy. Those are techniques that I use.
Yeah, that's really good. When I came back from Georgia the other day, I actually used, because I had to deliver a belt for somebody. One of my buddies, he needed a belt for his airplane, and so, here we go, right? So we took the belt from the airport that I was at to the airport he was at, which was only like a 10-minute flight. So I used that to two airports as kind of like my first flight, and did some, just making sure things were good. I didn't do the loitering over top, but definitely had some people that suggested that. But I thought it was just a short enough flight, and that there was another airport between it, that if anything did happen, I was good to go. You know what I mean? Yeah. So what types of aircraft do you all work on? Do you have a specialty? What's that look like?
Yeah, so we specialize in Cirrus, no doubt. We are a Diamond authorized service center as well.
Cool.
But as you know, there's the Diamond is an incredible airplane as well, especially the new DA50 RGs and the DA62. There's just not as many in the field right now. So really, Cirrus and Diamond, and then we'll take in handful of other planes, but normally like a Beechcraft G36 Bonanza or the G58 Baron, something like that.
Okay. By the way, we talked about this before we actually started recording, but I just want to commend you on your backdrop here. That is a real environment. I love it. So what's the aircraft on your right? Is that an Icon?
Yeah, my pride and joy is the Icon A5 here.
That is super cool. So is that your aircraft?
It is. That one's mine. We use it for discovery flights and some flight training, light flight training here at the airport, and that thing is incredible. I love every second of it.
Dude, that is so much. I might have to fly down sometime, and we might have to go flying in that, because if you'd be open to that. I've never been in one, and I've seen them all the time when I go to Oshkosh or Sun and Fun, right? And I just think they're so cool.
It's literally stupid how fun that thing is. I mean, it's a jet ski with wings. I mean, and it's so ridiculously easy to fly. And I understand why people get there's not that many people that really have gotten hurt in them, but I mean, they made an inherently stable airplane. You cannot spin the airplane.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
It won't spin. It has the same ballistic parachute system that the Cirrus has in it. It has the same Behringer wheels, a little bit smaller, but the Behringer wheels and brakes system. And it's just it's so light on the stick. It's very responsive. It's got plenty of power. And it is, and then on the water, it's just a jet ski. You can just hit like full rudder, and it'll rip a 180 in the water. I'll take people that have never flown on a discovery ride, and they're just like they can't imagine. They had no clue. They're just I had no clue it was going to be like this.
Wow, that is really cool. I didn't realize that they had that much maneuverability on the water. That's pretty cool. That's
and
really
cool. I mean, it's a VFR. You do have the Garmin system in it, which makes it nice for traffic and weather, but it's really a VFR airplane. You've got the natural horizon as your primary flight instrument, and then a big AOA right in front of you.
Nice.
There are some Navy guys that put that thing together.
Gotcha.
And you can go straight to 60 degrees of bank and pull, and you might just barely kiss the yellow AOA. The top of it, you'd still be in the green.
Okay, I had no idea that was that way. Okay, that's pretty cool. So do you guys you have a lot of lakes down there?
We do, yeah. And luckily, right here, there's one that's like 3 minutes from this airport, flying in the Icon.
Oh,
So we
that's
take
cool.
off, go straight to the lake. You do splash and goes, right? So it's just, yeah. If I took you, the first time I flew with the sales guys from Icon, I was just looking at them like, I hate you guys. I can't believe you did that.
That's great. Do you have any other aircraft that you own?
I did have a little Grumman Cheeto, which I sold a little while ago, that we would use as kind of the test bed for, we started, we're an ElectroAir and, a handful of other avionics and upgrades
Sure.
for dealers for. And so that one was like the test bed. We put the electronic ignition on it, ElectroAir,
Oh,
and that
nice.
was
Yeah.
awesome. And then we got Power Flow exhaust, dealership, so we slapped that on there, and then we got Aspen, so we slapped that in there. It's just like this, like little sleeper because I never did the paint either. It was so funny.
You got all these upgrades, but the paint's not done. Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah,
Um,
and then ElectroAir we've been installing in the all of the Cirruses, and that is awesome. It's a high performance ignition system,
Yeah.
and I don't know how much you've heard of that system or seen on.
Well, I'm familiar with it. Just give me the high level overview of that and some of the benefits for those that are listening.
Yeah, so it's it replaces the magnetos on the engine is like 1920s tractor technology, no joke, and they're reliable-ish, and most people have a lot of problems with them, and they're a very weak ignition system. So that most people don't realize that that the lead in the fuel and that the injection, like a Cirrus is fuel injected, right? But it's not just like a car that's sending a pulse of fuel into it. It's sending continuous flow. So that it's such a weak ignition system that it's not combusting the full air fuel mixture inside the cylinder. So the exhaust valve opens, it's still combusting into your exhaust. And so what the ElectroAir is it's a longer, hotter spark. Think of the difference of like, let's say 12,000 volts on a magneto to like 70,000 volts on an
Wow.
ElectroAir. So it's definitely, I think they quote about a 10% performance increase. We're not sticking dynos on them, but you can definitely tell the difference
Wow.
in the seat and during the climb. So I think it flies a little bit faster, definitely climbs better. It runs better for sure at idle and at cruise. You can get better fuel economy as well. And then the biggest thing is you're saving your cylinders because it's not leaving as many lead and carbon deposits. If you own a Cirrus, you probably have changed a few cylinders, I'm just guessing, at this point.
So knock on wood, I haven't, but it's coming.
Yep. So
It's coming.
yeah. So the idea with this system is you're saving those cylinders
Okay.
because it's getting all of the lead and the deposits out of the cylinder. It's by a much hotter and cleaner spark, and it's push button start too.
Yeah, that's super cool. I literally saw those, at one of the air shows. I go to almost all the air shows, right? And so I had considered putting that on mine, but then I just didn't know, and so I didn't. Have you heard of the system called Fire Frost?
Oh yeah, yeah. So we're a dealer for them as well.
you?
I think
Okay.
that's another smart.
Okay.
A very smart. It's harder to sell that one because like ElectroAir, okay, it goes faster and it
Right.
runs better. It's like that's
Yeah.
so much easier, burns less gas.
Yep.
Fire Frost is a harder sell because you have to pitch the safety behind
Correct.
it.
Mhm.
And really, for me as a pilot on a single engine plane, that my biggest fear is an engine fire that I cannot put out. Because essentially it's going to burn through the firewall, and then eventually what's behind the firewall is you.
Yeah.
And the crashes that occurred on, they found the pilots in the back of the plane where they could not man the controls anymore, so they just they
Jumped in the back.
jumped in the
Yeah.
back and rode it to the ground. It's very scary. So having that, when you put it that way, you're like, okay, yeah, I might consider it, but you have
Yeah.
to really.
Yeah, I interviewed Mike. So Mike, is at that Mike. He was on the podcast a few months ago, and I thought that was a really great system. But you're right. I mean, it's for emergencies, right? And here's the thing: just last week, I haven't really talked about this publicly, but It's all good. One of the things that happened, we actually were flying down to Georgia at night, and at about 9:30, we lost Alt 2, and at that moment, as soon as we lost it, we smelled smoke, and it was a burning smell, and we obviously declared an emergency, and we went into this Habernish, Georgia area, and got on the ground. What happened was that alternator, Alt 2 up on the front, had seized, but yet that belt on the G6 kept spinning. And what happened was it almost fried it all off, and that's what we were smelling. And thank God nothing that sparked or did anything. But my worst fear is a airplane fire that you don't know where it's at or how you can put it out if it's on the front. And at the moment, I thought, is this really happening? Like, what the heck? But
I wish I had the fire frost.
yeah, exactly. I know,
Yeah.
right? And at the time, I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, it's pretty benign, but it could have turned into a situation, right? I mean, anything could happen on that. So, but the fire frost system, I thought that you might be aware of that, and of course, you're a dealer for it, so that's cool. Well, this has been great. How if you could recommend or give someone that's listening that is an aircraft owner, you've got tons of experience. You've got people that are, doing their annuals, all the other preventative maintenance. Is there anything that you've come across that you can share with us that is a high level thing that aviators ought to watch out for on their airplanes and or just keep an eye on from any? I know it's a very broad question, but is there anything that is there patterns that you see that maybe people can look out for before things get too bad? Is there anything like that?
Yeah, I do. My mind goes kind of back to the mindset piece of it.
Okay.
Normally, especially in the customers that own Cirruses and the G36s and the Diamonds, I mean, they're high level and high net worth individuals that are busy. They're very busy, and they'll use the aircraft to save time, which is amazing. But I think what I try to coach them on is slowing down. Right, you're saving so much time already. You just don't have to be in a hurry. And I would say the mindset of like the rules that are out there are, for the most part, in business, you're kind of like, rules are, this is just an obstacle, I'm going to get around it. But the rules in aviation, for the most part, are written in blood.
Yeah.
And I would say, just, going into something, and a normal response should be, this is new. And I would, you should have a heightened level of worry. Right, you're kind of, any little thing you're worried about. That's a normal response, and I would recommend to use that. Right, like there's no reason to try to push the boundaries everywhere. I would. This is a rule, and I may not understand it, and it's slowing me down, or it's anything, but this is probably here to save my life, and I really just don't know enough to know why it is or isn't there.
Right.
So, and I would say the same thing with aircraft maintenance, right? Like if you're going through, annual, that for the most part, the mechanics, they're just trying to keep their license, right? So, let's say they put ICAs or all these inspections that you've never seen, and to you, this looks like, oh, he's nickel and diming me, but no, these are things that are required.
Right.
They may be recommended for sure. Some of them may be recommended. Some of them may be required, and there's a reason for it.
Right.
Every AD that is there is because somebody died. So I would lean more towards the mindset of this, especially my friends and family in the Cirrus community and the Diamond community. Really.
Yeah, I love that. That's spot on, and I couldn't agree more. The mindset of doing things the right way versus cutting corners is going to save your life. And coming off of my annual just now, I can tell you from experience that whenever they sent me the list and they said, hey, here's all the airworthiness items and here's all the recommendations, it didn't take me too long to say, you know what, go ahead and knock it all out. And whenever the mechanic says something to the effect of, I can tell you don't skimp on things, that makes me feel good because, you know, that is true. And there's no reason to buy an aircraft if that's how you're going to take that approach. So I hope that's a lesson for everybody that does tune into this because it's important. So
Yeah.
that
How
means,
much is
yeah,
your life worth, right?
yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, that's kind of how I approach it. I take that approach as far as the mindset, this is going to be done right. And if it takes a little bit longer, then so be it. It's fine. So that being said, James, this has been awesome, man. I really enjoy getting to know you and understanding your story and journey, both on the aviation side and also the entrepreneur side. It sounds like you're doing great work, brother.
Gabe, I appreciate being here. I'm
Yeah.
happy to come back on. If you have any topics that you'd like me to go through, I'll continue watching your show and recommending it to friends. I think you
Thank
do
you.
an awesome job as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure getting to know you. And, you know, one of the things we might be able to do if you're ever open to it, we're always looking for people that would be potentially speakers for a virtual speak out for Smokehouse. And so if you're open to something like that, maybe we could pick a topic, you know, around the repair mechanic side of things or annual, whatever it is, and maybe do a little speak out virtually if you're open to that.
Oh, certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. And I still want to fly down there and jump in that icon with you sometime.
Yeah, come out. We'll go ham on the lake.
That's awesome. Well, keep up the great work and everything that you're doing. Congratulations on just amazing success, and I love the approach that you take. And thanks for joining us on Hangar Flying with Smokehouse Pilots this evening. All right, so for those tuning in, thank you for tuning in. And just remember, we do drop a podcast episode every Monday morning. And so be sure to subscribe to Spotify to get those alerts and or our YouTube channel. So that being said, James, any last parting words for anybody that you can share?
Happy flying.
Happy flying. Awesome, brother. Thank you. And I hope everyone has a great evening. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.